What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. And today we're going to go over 5 Christian-friendly fantasy series. Got that in the first take. So I'm going to go over 5 different fantasy series that are completely friendly for a Christian to read, meaning the content in it is safe for most ages. I won't say all ages because these are predominantly adult fantasy series, maybe even young adult. But for the most part, the content is clean. There's no explicit content. Maybe there's not even language and things like that. So I'm going to go over 5 series that are Christian friendly. But first, I'm going to start with 2 honorable mentions. So the first series that I'm going to recommend as an honorable mention is the Wingfeather Saga. Now, the reason why I have this as an honorable mention and not in the actual list is because this is a middle grade series that my son read and loved. It's completely clean. It's an adventure tale with children in it. It's got some fantasy elements, but it is 100% clean. The second honorable mention is going to be classics, things like Count of Monte Cristo, Dracula, Frankenstein. You know, the things where you would walk into the bookstore and you would see the classic section. These books are inherently clean as far as the content goes. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some adult themes or maybe even some adult elements in them, because things like Count of Monte Cristo and Dracula definitely lean towards an adult reader, but they are clean in the sense that there's nothing explicit. You know, there's not really any language in them or anything like that. So I have that also in an honorable mention because I couldn't really pick which of the classics that I would recommend over another. So I just said the classics in general, those books are Christian friendly. So before I start my list, I want to put in a disclaimer here where these are fantasy books. So if you're a Christian who wants zero magic in your books, fantasy probably isn't the genre for you. But most of these books, I think 4 out of 5 of these series have some sort of magic element in them. So if you're not looking for that, I would say maybe lean towards a different genre, or this list probably isn't going to be for you. But starting with number 5, I'm going to say is The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Now, these are the Aragon books, and the only reason I have this at number 5 right now is because I've only read book 1. Now, this, I would say, is more of a YA series, but it is still excellent. I read it as an adult. I thought it was great. I've just started book 2. I'm not very far into it, but so far there is nothing explicit in nature, whether it be language or content, that I would warn or be wary of another Christian reading. I have such confidence, at least in book 1, that I read book 1 with my son. Now, again, this is, I would say, young adult, because there are some fighting sequences that go into a little bit of the brutality of war, but nothing that I would say is gruesome or explicit in nature. So that's number 5. Number 4 is going to be the Lazarus Trilogy by James Islington. I cannot praise this series enough. It is written by another Christian brother. About a third of the way into book 1, you actually see his theology steeped into the work. And as a matter of fact, it is sort of the undercurrent for the entire series. The Lazarus Trilogy is excellent. There's nothing explicit in nature as far as language or, different types of adult circumstances. None of that is in there. It is just a magic and fantasy series that is marked safe for all of us to pick up and read. So please make sure you do and support him. Also, I plan on picking up The Will of the Many by James Islington later on this year, that I've heard similar takes from. So series number 3 is going to be the Redwall series by Brian Jacques. This really is the series that got me into reading as a kid. I was not really a big reader. There wasn't really a lot in my school library that kind of jumped out at me, but the covers on these books really did. Now, this is the only series in this list that does not contain a magic system that I can remember. And I want to put that in there because it's been a while since I've read all of these, because I think there's like 22, 23 different books in this series, and all of them are good. Some of them are better than others, but none of them are bad. And so imagine Lord of the Rings, but with animals. That's the best way I can describe it, except for really it's more of an action adventure story than it does have a magic system in it. As a matter of fact, I don't remember there being a magic system in this series at all. The Redwall series, my favorite is The Legend of Luke. You can start with Redwall. I don't necessarily think that's the strongest one, but that is where officially the story begins. But you could start in The Legend of Luke and be and be perfectly fine. So the Redwall series by Brian Jacques. My number 2 is going to be The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Now, this should be no surprise. This is written by a Christian brother, and the Christian theme is the entirety of the story of redemption, of salvation, of the resurrection story, the Genesis story. All of it is combined in this one tale. I shouldn't have to really speak too much on this series. Again, this is going to be another middle grade series, but if there was any book on this list that I would really be trying to convince another Christian to read, it would be The Magician's Nephew. Reading the creation story from that perspective, the lines in there were so good. I mean, I was highlighting not just lines, but I was highlighting full pages of dialogue or full pages of description of how creation was spoken into being. It's fantastic. And then my number 1 series, probably to no one's surprise, is going to be The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, this is my number 1 favorite fantasy series of all time. It's actually my favorite book series of all time. I don't think you can get better than the writing that is executed in these books. This is the story, and this is so perfect to a T. Now, I'm a little biased, I would say, because I know most people have seen the movies, but not as many people have read the books. And I would actually, you have some people that say, well, the books are far superior, and you have some that actually that will argue and say the movies are superior. But I would argue that I like aspects of both. There are certain aspects within the movie trilogy that I really hold dear, because I remember going to the theater on opening day of each of those movies to see those. So that's definitely part of it. But there's other aspects in the book that are so much better explained, and they really just make more sense. And so let me just give you a for instance. In the movies, the scene where Sam and Frodo and Gollum are going up the stairs to Shelob's lair, Frodo begins to blame Sam and tells him to go home. It really seemed like there was a huge shift there. And I understand how the ring was corrupting Frodo, and that was sort of the theme that was going on there with him. But it almost seemed uncharacteristic how quick that shift was. And it made Frodo seem whiny. It made him seem stupid because he was falling for Gollum's plan. But in the books, it's completely different. In the books, Sam comes to Frodo and he says things like, again, it's been a while since I've read it, but Sam comes to Frodo and he says, "You're being tricked. He's luring us into a trap." And Frodo says, "I know, Sam, just trust me." Right? That makes so much more sense as far as things about the book that I like better than the movies. But inversely, I like how the Two Towers story is told far better in the movies than I do in the book. Because if you know the book, it's the first half of the book follows Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli trying to get Merry and Pippin back. So it's just those characters that it follows. And then you don't hear anything about Sam and Frodo. And then the second half of the book is exclusively Sam and Frodo. And so I wasn't crazy about that in the book. And so the movie does a much better job of blending those stories, showing how it's all one big story. Now, one of the other things that I love about The Lord of the Rings, as far as why it's my favorite series, is because the main character is not really the hero of the story. Everybody thinks of Frodo when they think of Lord of the Rings. They either think of Frodo or Aragorn. Now, Frodo obviously is a major player, and Aragorn is another main character, but neither of these, to me, are the main character. They are not the hero of the story, because we do follow Frodo, we do follow Aragorn, and some people might even say Gandalf, but the true hero of the story is Samwise Gamgee. He is my favorite character of all time, Samwise Gamgee, because he is the true hero. He fought and gave everything that he had to support Frodo in this quest because of his love for him as a friend, almost as a brother. And the book describes that brotherhood in much greater depth. But then thinking about when Tolkien wrote this, being after World War II, and then Frodo leaves and he sails off with Gandalf and the elves. But then we come back and we look at Sam and Merry and Pippin going back to the Shire, and we see how Sam, his courage, it's not that it just grew, but it's just he was better able to express it because that courage was always there. And then what does he do? After he literally saves the world, he goes back home, he marries the girl of his dreams, he starts a family, and he settles down to a quiet life in the Shire. Favorite storyline of all time. Favorite character arc. He is by far, hands down, the best character in fantasy. So these were 5 Christian-friendly fantasy series for anybody to pick up that will leave you with a sense of hope, encouragement. They'll bring a smile to your face. Sometimes they'll put you on the edge of your seat, but these are all great series to pick up at any time for anybody to read. Now, if you're going to ask me, maybe as a new reader, where would you start? I would say probably start with Aragon. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more accessible to a new reader. But if you're looking to just dive in, I would say Lycanius is a good place. I don't necessarily recommend Lord of the Rings right out of the gate, but if you guys have any more Christian-friendly fantasy series, please leave them down in the comment section below, because that's what I'm looking for. I started this channel to kind of be like the common sense media of fantasy and sci-fi books. And so I'm constantly searching for that next series. So if you guys would do me a favor, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. But more than that, please share these videos to your Christian friends, because especially those that you know that love to read, because they may be looking for something like this that can help direct them towards how they spend their time and money. And that's really the reason why I started this channel. So if you don't mind, if you know somebody, if you have a Christian brother or sister that you know loves to read, please share these videos with them, because maybe I can help them spend their time and money a little more wisely from one Christian brother to another. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.